All right, my name is Jeremey Hagerman. I'm from Cisco Systems, and all of you, I welcome all of you to my talk. So I want to talk about security operations from a real world perspective. I used to run a SOC, and then I ran the cyber defense team for a while at Discover Financial Services. So I've been in cyber defense for, I think now about 100,000 years, so adjusted for inflation. So I want to start off with just like normalizing some of the stuff that we talk about when we talk about security operations. And I want to talk about some of the different security operations models so we can have a basis from which to further discuss how we're going to build out from there. So everyone has a model that they're in, whether or not it's intentional or non-intentional. But you'll find yourself in one of these models, right? Generally speaking. So we talk about the security operations as a service model. You have the SOC NOC. When I say SOC NOC, I'm talking about individuals that are doing both network operations and security operations. We have like co-managed type situations where we have both the SOC situation as well as an internal SOC. And then we also have dedicated SOCs, and then command SOCs are what you would see in very, very large organizations. And that's kind of where, once companies get to be, in the Fortune 100, that's kind of where they start to move towards. But realizing that each one of these has a strength and a weakness, many times we start implementing these models, we implement and we talk about the strength of the model, and we kind of ignore the weakness. And we really need to lean into the weakness and acknowledge the weakness and address it. So for example, we talk about like the dedicated SOC as a service model. If we don't have people on the ground, boots on the ground, we're really going to struggle with actually doing things, right? Because the boots on the ground that will be there, they're not going to be educated, they're not going to be security people, and they're not really going to know how to do anything other than follow what some weird person on the phone says. And the person on the phone has no idea of the operational context of those events, or what may break, or what may not break, or should someone be talking to someone else within an organization. They're only looking at kind of an alerts-based model. So I just kind of like set with that, and then start to talk about like SOC growth trajectories. And this is just kind of like where we see people move, right? So people start off with like an individual contributor, they'll move to a security team, then they move to one of these models before they ultimately end up in a command SOC. But the reality is that the majority of the companies right now are kind of in this spot. They're in this SOC NOC model, SOC as a service model, co-managed. And we just kind of have to understand that, because as we're going through this cybersecurity maturity lifecycle, as we're moving more towards anticipatory, we have to really understand in our SOC evolution that we're always cognizant of where we are, what that weakness is, and we're addressing that weakness, as well as in the long term, do we have the right trajectory? Because what happens a lot of times, we end up with these point solutions in the time frame, and the result of that is we end up with a spaghetti of security products that don't really do anything and don't have really any intent. And so we're trying to move beyond that, because when we talk about it, actions determine outcomes. And we need to create TTPs within our organizations that help us move towards a model that is solid. And we always going to need boots on the ground. So, I kind of skipped over that, but all right. So, what security teams want? This is a marketing slide, so I apologize, but it does kind of hit, these next few slides are kind of marketing slides, and I apologize about that, but I want to kind of drive home the fact that we have to start thinking about making our environment simple, accelerate our involvement, as well as that we're keeping our environment secure, because the reality is that things are getting more complex, and complexity is the antithesis of security. So the more complexity we have, the more difficult it is actually to do real world security. So basically we have a platform that helps kind of address some of that stuff. And I want to kind of like, I put this up there because I want people to understand, like, Cisco's been doing this for a very, very, very long time. If you guys remember Mars, if you're old enough to remember Mars, it was way ahead of its time. Fantastic product. I still don't know if I forgive us for getting rid of that. That's a great product. But it does take time to build that up. As well as when we start talking about the threat research stuff, our threat research team, Talos, is one of the best in the world. I mean, no one can refute that. It is clearly one of the best. And I once jokingly said to the Talos person, you know, you guys work with the government? And the Talos person said back to me, no, they work with us. So, you know, maybe there's some ego involved there, I don't know. But we have a very strong portfolio. And so most organizations, they'll focus primarily on like an endpoint security model. And when they have the endpoint security model, they'll have those kind of filtered in. But we really need to be able to look across the entire spectrum. So look at network, because if an endpoint becomes disabled, then we still need some secondary control that can look at that. As well as when we start getting into cloud environments and cloud edge environments, those areas are evolving so quickly, and they're so difficult to stay on top of, that securing them is incredibly difficult. Because to me, at least in my opinion, hopefully you guys agree, you have to know a thing before you can secure a thing, right? And that is a severe challenge. And I can tell you, we've made some doozies of mistakes in our past at my previous employer actually doing that. And the reality is that if we can get to a place where we have something that's controlling the underlay, where it kind of trickles up the environment, and then we can see everything at a platform level, it makes it a little bit easier to handle. And so I want to talk to you guys about SecureX. SecureX is our XDR platform. It is cloud native. You basically bring in all the telemetry from all your tools, all the outside tools, and that's growing every day. Everybody has their own way of bringing telemetry in. If we don't have the support, there's a third-party connector that we have that you can use to bring third-party data into the tool. But at the end of the day, what we're really talking about is starting to use cloud-native security platforms to manage the incidents that come into our environment. And I would just say this. I bring this up because this is not actually even a complete picture, but when we start out with these alerts most of the time have no context, and then we have to pivot between different places, and everybody talks about having a single pane of glass. I don't necessarily agree with that model on the operations of the device side, because then you end up with like 50 tabs this way, 50 tabs this way, 50 tabs in the middle. But our security signals and our ability to manipulate and automate the responses to those security signals, we should be pulling those into a single location, a single pane of glass. And so when we talk about like taking these IOCs and then turning them into action, there we go. Oh, look at that. That was fancy, wasn't it? We're really talking about like two workflows, right? We're talking about an incident handling workflow, and we're talking about a threat hunting workflow. And the difference between those two, in my opinion, is you start off, if you're doing an incident investigation workflow, basically what's happening is you're using your tools, whatever tools they are, and you're ciphering through them, and you begin to find things that are interesting. And then when we find those, we turn those into our own indicators of compromise for a given case, right? And so once we turn those into IOCs for that case, or I call them IOCs, we turn them into IOCs, then we want to take that data and then find out how much we know about that in a bunch of different ways. And so if you're used to like traditional SIM models, what you would do is you would start out with like an IP address or something like that, and then you would go and say, okay, show me everything about the IP address. Okay, well now we did that, now let's, okay, oh, the username. That and the username, right? I don't know if you guys have done this kind of stuff. And then that and the username and the MAC address. And it just depends on how the log gives you the data, right? And the idea is that when we're looking at secure XDR type solutions or XDR type solutions, we need to be able to see relationships and get the data in a way that makes sense to humans. Because humans are really good at doing like complex processing from like when you give them something visual, they can really deal with it. But when you give them words, or you give them just like static things, they're not as good at that as it turns out as maybe even computers are. So, so I'm going to take you to a demo. So this is SecureX, and SecureX is, we start off by really just focusing on, I gotta take myself out of presenter mode apparently. There we go. Thank you. So, when we start off with SecureX, we have our standard, what I call the sock wall kind of, dashboards. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because everybody can kind of like configure. You can configure your own dashboards. You can customize it to just for you or other people. And as you start to build in integrations, then you'll start to see more and more tiles that are available for you to actually build dashboards on. I don't like to spend too much time on the dashboard because I feel like that's kind of table stakes at this point, right? We do have like security events that come in on the site. You can see, so you can see if any new security events have come in. And then here's the actual integrations that we have enabled. When you go actually to do the integrations, so we have a bunch of different integrations. It tells you instantly if there's a problem with the integration or if there's not a problem with the integration. Because if we have a problem with the integration, we don't know about it, that can skew our data. So when we actually go to run an investigation, we want to make sure that we understand at the time we're running it, anything that could have impacted negatively. So let's start, so we get our dashboard done. And then the other kind of piece thing that we can pull in is we start to pull in something with our tool called Insights. With Insights, we're actually pulling in, we're actually pulling in data from your MDMs. So with the data from your MDMs, we can begin to build a complete picture of an endpoint. So if you think about, like when I said before, we have to go and piecemeal things together, there's many different ways that we can pull telemetry from the beginning and say that they're related, and then ask APIs, what do you know about those, and then pull them back and give a picture. That's really the thing that we kind of want to drive towards, right? And that's one of the real powers here. So, so let me show you real quick. I'm just going to go through the threat hunting workflow, but realize you can do the same thing, and I'll show you the incidents in a minute, but you can do the same kind of thing given your own IOCs as I'm about to show you. So this is a Talos blog on half of them. The fact that it's a Talos blog, it could be any web page. This could be Splunk, this could be any page that you can, any web page out there. We have a Chrome add-on, and when you click on the Chrome add-on, and then you come to this little thing here, Find Observables on Page, it actually parses through this entire page and pulls out all the IOCs on this page, and then gives you a really quick disposition on those different elements, right? So there's 9 of these that are unknown. We know 5 are malicious, and 2 are clean. So let's say that now we want to go do, oh, by the way, so let me show you this too. So on this web page, these IOCs are actually, we call them defanged, right? So if you see here, they've got the brackets around the periods. The tool actually pulls that out for you. And in my previous role as a SOC manager, I invented something called the hover click, because my team came to me and said, hey, you clicked on an IOC. And I was like, I didn't click on an IOC. And they said, but we see it in the logs. And I said, I didn't click on the IOC. And they said, okay, you must have hover clicked it. So I'm the inventor of the hover click, apparently, which got me a complimentary free rebuild. I'm sorry? Yeah, so it got me a complimentary free rebuild of my laptop, which was fantastic. And because at my previous employer, they don't mess around about that stuff. It's just you get something, you get going. So, so realize that we can just quickly pull those things out. Let's say we can quickly pull it out. There we go. get the dispositions, and then we can just say investigate threat response. So now what this is doing is we pulled all those IOCs off that page. We've defamed them. We're now going out and we're saying, give us all the information that you have about this particular thing, and then bring it back in a way that is meaningful to us. And right, so we have 3 different windows here, and I'm going to actually add. You can see you can actually add things to the workflow. I'm going to add 2 of the clean elements to the workflow. And so while this is building, so realize that what we're doing right now is we're going out real time. We're pulling back data from all the APIs that we have integrated in SecureX. So it's asking all of these integrations what they know about those things. Give us all the data you have on those, and then pull all that back and give us a view that humans can understand. And I hate this layout, so I'm going to move something down at the bottom. It just makes more sense to me. So you can see right now it's actually building real time those things. So it's actually taking all of those elements, going out and asking the APIs for stuff, and it's telling us along the way, oh, by the way, that broke. That's broken. So these are things that are potentially impacting to our investigation, right? So, which I think is really important, because I think a lot of tools, they don't really tell you that. It's just if it's broken, it just pulls the data back and goes, here's the data, and you don't know that something's broken. And so that's one of the things I really like about this, is that ability to see that. So it's now gone out to all the APIs, asked it 42 questions about that, and now it's going to start presenting, it's pulling all that data out, and it's going to start compressing it down together to make it a little bit more meaningful for humans here. All right, so let's give this one more second to finish here. Realize that while we're building out the top, we're also building a timeline here. And the timeline, the reason the timeline is important is because you always want to find patient 0. Patient 0 is one of the core elements that we need to understand in investigation to actually be fruitful. And so we can see pretty clearly right here that, at least now, unless this is done building, it's still building. But right now we can see that patient 0 came in on that particular date, right? And when we click on it, once we get this built, we'll be able to click on it and see the whole thing about it. So the other thing too is that we also get all the target information. So this is anything that marries up in our environment. So this, for example, is a DNS tag, an open DNS tag. So we're pulling in open DNS, and we actually saw some DNS activity come from our open DNS stuff. Does anyone use open DNS in the past, in the future? Planning on it? Okay, all right. So open DNS is run by Cisco, and the commercial product for open DNS is Umbrella. And so we're actually pulling in the Umbrella DNS information into this workflow to see that stuff here. So it's now built out a map. I'm going to make this bigger so it's not just so much of an eyesore. And what we end up with is stuff that is married and stuff that's not married. So we show you stuff that doesn't marry because you might want to add some of this additional information to your investigation. So just because it didn't hit on exactly what we provided, we may want to pivot and add some MD5s or something like that to this investigation that we found that was interesting. And the way we would do that is we just click on this, and then we click on this, and then we can add it to our investigation. Realize that if this is even too complicated, I can even begin to actually create target filters where these are the indirect flows for this environment. And so you see it took away the ones that weren't connected. But we can also do direct connects. And so now we're looking at specifically the things that talk to the other things in the environment. Very clear picture of what happened. But to me, if I'm doing an investigation, I kind of want it all. Right? That's just kind of the way I want. I want the whole kit and caboodle. I want to be able to see everything. So here we can see there's this device granite, which the purple things are the things in our environment. Green things are good things, red things are bad things, and gray things are, I don't know what they are things. So just realize that the blue stuff is our stuff. So we can see Granite was targeted by this domain. When they went to resolve it, they went to go resolve some stuff from this interaction, and now we have the malicious domain, as well as the IP address that was resolved to, any SHAs that were pulled in related to this, the disposition of them, and then if we wanted to, we could even send these off to dynamic analysis with a click of a button here and send this off to our investigation side. So the last piece I want to show you here is, I don't know, does anyone have ServiceNow? Yeah? Okay. So everyone that has a ticketing system, if you have a ticketing system, you love submitting tickets. I mean, like, you probably just submit them for fun, you know, those kind of things. If you're the other type of person, like the rare person that doesn't like doing that, we can also do things like create tickets in ServiceNow for you. So, well, this is not a good example. Let's try, we'll send home. Let's say we wanted to add this to a null route on the firewall, and realize this is a lab, that's why you're seeing home IP here, because we didn't want to go into a bad domain. We go down to our orchestrations, and we have a canned orchestration that will just add it to a null, it submits a ServiceNow request to add it to a null route on the firewall. So we come over to ServiceNow, we go to favorites, go to changes, hopefully that clicked. Yep. Okay, so now we can see we have a ServiceNow ticket filled out. Has any pertinent information that you want to put in here. This is all editable in the orchestrator. If you have descriptions, but you can see we put the justification in, the implementation plan, risk, the whole 9 automated from that tool. Because not everything is going to be a right-click and go do things, right? We realize that we live in the real world here, and you know it's not a right-click to remediate the whole world, right? But if you can, if you want it, you can do that though. So you could if you wanted to. So for example, one of these, this sends it over to our Meraki devices. We could actually just submit a firewall request or submit a request to the Meraki to just block this IP address right from here. Where this comes in handy is if you've got teams that you don't have to work with to get some of this stuff done, and there's sometimes an impediment to that, but they'll let you like add a single firewall rule, the single IP address. You can do that here, right? So, and it's just click, it's show you what's happening, and then let you decide what you want to do. And that's kind of the power of this tool, is that ability to see everything, and then instantly we go into remediation. And currently, this is an entitled product. If you have any Cisco security product, you are entitled to have this right now. So if you have a Cisco security product and you're not using this, I would recommend you actually take a look at it because you have it. I do want to show you one other thing. So a lot of times in investigations, we get bad intel from a source or something that comes into these things. Something else you do is if you get bad intel from a source, you just go to one of the modules and say, don't show me that one, right? I mean, it's kind of like, you would think that would be in every tool, but it's sometimes just like, oh, we're going to give you everything that ever happened, and that's not really helpful. As well as, like in this instance, we have a lot of related elements, but if we wanted to go in and add a related element, we could do that. Or if we wanted to bring focus to it by removing some of the objects that are in here, maybe we want to remove the clean winds or something like that to give us a little bit more focus. So you can completely control your view. It's all dynamic and starts building all this stuff out. And now I'll show you the last thing, which is we start looking at the individual elements here. We get all the information that we want to have on it, any information around what kind of attacks we've seen related to this, as well as any verdicts that have been associated with it, whether they be coming in this instance from Umbrella or whether they be coming from Talos or some other source. We get all that information, and then I said that was the last thing, but I'll show you one more thing, and that is this, that when we look at this the timeline here for sightings. We get the stuff that's relative to your environment, but you also get the global perspective of it as well. And why that's important, obviously, is this targeted? Is this a spike that just came in across the world? It gives us more information, more context about this particular instance that we're dealing with. So I will leave it there. Do you guys have any questions? If you don't have at least one question, I'm going to cry. On stage. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
So this guy last night heard a really snazzy bow tie. Why are you not wearing a bow tie?
That's a good question. So this is what we call the TSA tuxedo. So this is how TSA's dress. Here's the TSA here too. This is our tuxedo. So you can't see the tie. It's there, but it's virtual. It's both a bow tie and a regular tie too. And it has all the different knots. So yeah, it's virtual. Yeah.
Because of the integration, so what EDR solutions do you integrate with?
What EDR solutions?
Yes.
So currently we support obviously ours and a couple other ones, but there's a lot of big changes coming. So I don't want to go too far down the road of exactly what we support right now because it's about to change. But we do have, from an EDR perspective, we do have a few of the other ones. Right now it's not as strong as we really want it to be. So yeah, I mean, we think that there's more room to grow there, and that's coming very soon.
What about the network logs?
I'm sorry?
To collect the network logs.
I'm sorry, I still didn't hear you.
For network logs, to collect it.
So logs?
Yes.
Yeah, so we don't do logs. So we will pull from like Graph or Splunk or whatever, and that just becomes an API source for us because we're not in the like collecting data. We're actually pulling in the telemetry from all those different places and then giving you context for it. If you've ever dealt with some of the SIM products or SIEM products, depending on your perspective, how to say that, what you end up with a lot of times is they're very good at displaying data once you know what you're looking for, but sometimes finding, like I always say, it's like you got a room full of hay, you got to find the one needle, but once you know where the needle type that you're looking for, you can find it quickly. And that's their power, is that they can, once you know what you're looking for, they can pull data for you. So we're just kind of like pulling all that together by saying, okay, you guys do the SIM stuff, right? You do that stuff for SIEM stuff, and then we'll pull in that data into this tool. And then I'll say one last thing about that as well, which is we did a whole big effort at my previous employer to try and build everything into Splunk. Splunk is a fantastic tool. I'm not getting, I love Splunk. So say that up front, I love Splunk. The challenge is that when you start trying to do these like complex visualizations like I just showed you, they're really difficult, if not, you got to get double charged or something for them, right? Having said all that, what I think the better thing to do is use your SIMs and your SIEMs to pull data in, pull alerting in, and then start pivoting out of those into the tools that just do it better. You know what I mean? Instead of trying to build everything in there, pivot to your firewall vendor, your EDR vendor, or whatever. Cool?
We got to wrap it up, actually.
Okay. All right, thank you, everybody.